At the northern end of San Diego rests a small strip of sand known as Torrey Pines State Beach. Easily accessed by Coastal Route 1, this area is a popular spot for the local inlanders to escape the heat. Lifeguard supervisor Ed Vidraska has been working this beach for over 10 years.
We always monitor the weather because our visitation is highly predicated on the weather.
While the weather in Torrey Pines is often predictable, its dangerous rip currents are not.
When the tide changes, we get rip currents. And on the dropping tide, the rip currents have a little bit more speed to them, a little bit more oomph, a little bit more power. When that happens, that creates a lot more of our rescues. We probably make about 90% of our rescues when the rip currents are happening, and we will certainly have some today. The water temperature's been very warm the last few days, so the public knows that, and the word kind of gets out, and we have a lot of people here. The tide is going to be dropping for the next several hours, and as it does that, it's going to create more rips for it.
Rip currents are created when large volumes of water rush across the uneven sand beds, creating channels of strong, fast-moving currents out to sea. These so-called flash rips often form in a matter of seconds and can swiftly drag swimmers away from the beach. This is Tower 2 at Torrey Pines State Beach. On the tower today is lifeguard Bryant Davies.
Tower 2, Torrey Pines, is a tower that has a lot of action. There's a lot of things that can happen. There's rip currents that pop up, so that kind of rescue is fairly common.
All our guards know very well about the Tower 2 rip. That's why we put a veteran lifeguard in this tower.
Today we have not big surf, but medium, so the rip currents are pulling.
Lifeguard Davies is scanning the waters off Tower 2 when he sees a young boy in trouble.
When I noticed the kid struggling on his way back in, I realized it was something I had to respond as quickly as possible to.
The victim is a 10-year-old boy who has been pulled out by the Tower 2 rip. He's a good swimmer, but can't escape the current pulling him out to sea.
Thought he could touch, but when I got out there, he realized he was a lot deeper than he actually was. He told me that he needed some assistance getting back in.
The boy has rolled onto his back and desperately tries to stay afloat. Lifeguard Davies can sense his exhaustion.
So I wrapped my buoy around him and pulled him in.
This was the fourth person that Bryant has pulled out of the rip this morning. Later that day, lifeguard and peace officer Micah Moore checks in with Tower 2.
Have you been pretty busy down here?
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy lately.
Moore is a 4-year veteran of the state park lifeguard system.
Of all the jobs I've had, this one, just helping people in the manner we do, is by far the most rewarding thing that I've done.
Micah knows Tower 2 all too well. On March 20th, 2010, Moore and lifeguard Catherine Graham closed their tower at 6 p.m. They are now a mile away back at headquarters. The beach is now unguarded, but the rip current in front of Tower 2 is working overtime.
I'm in Torrey Pines State Reserve. It's a guy right here calling for help because his girlfriend is looking at the water.
Okay, hold on the line, please. Hold on the line.
It's about a mile away to the shop up at the top of the hill. Catherine was washing down the Jeep. I changed out of my reds and put on my clothes, and we hear a call come in.
Lifeguard dispatch 31 Sam, receiving a 911 call. Water-related emergency, Torrey Pines.
I need my fins. There's a buoy in the car. Jumped in the car, changing out of my clothes, putting my red trunks back on.
2 young swimmers, Jessica and Troy Lee, have been sucked 50 yards offshore. This amateur video shows Jessica struggling in the current.
There's a second person out there that no one can see.
The other guy went under?
Yes.
Okay.
The calls we were getting from our dispatch that were 911 relays were that there were 2 victims, a male and a female. A male had gone out after the female. I expected to see 2 people out in front of Tower 2. That's where they were reporting it. By the time we get down to the hill, we could see someone out in the water. The sun was in our eyes. There was a lot of glare. So we could just see 2 dark objects in the middle of the rip. It wasn't until we got closer that we noticed that one of those was not a body, it was actually a bodyboard.
Catherine continues to scan the water for the second victim. while Micah grabs his fins and sprints after Jessica. On the shore, Catherine radios for immediate backup. San Diego dispatch is quick to respond.
Dispatch 31 Sam, swimmers in distress, Torrey Pines, outside Tower 2.
The first thought that came over my mind was, oh my God, somebody's drowning. We knew we had to act fast.
Jet 1 heading that way.
I knew it was going to be quite some distance. I remember looking down at the speedometer at one point, and the speed was faster than I've ever seen it.
From Black's Beach, San Diego Lifeguards Eric Kerr and Lance Mendoza initiate a Code 3 response.
And so when the call came through, we also responded. We're about 5.5 miles away. You're thinking, just get me on scene fast.
Micah paddles through 53-degree water with 3-foot waves crashing all around him.
I had a general idea of where she was. She was out towards the end of the rip. But the problem in the rip current, there's times where you're not able to see what's ahead of you. So a lot of that, I was trying to swim with my head up as much as I can. And every time, I was kind of at the crest of a wave, I'm looking to see if I could see where she was. I was able to keep an eye on the boogie board for most of it. I only remember seeing her one last time before I got to the boogie board. I don't remember seeing her again.
Just before Micah reaches her, Jessica succumbs to the elements and sinks from view.
I remember thinking, this is my last chance, I've got to find her. And a wave broke. Once that wave broke and I went under, I just determined, all right, I'm gonna be underwater till I find her.
In a desperate maneuver, Micah dives toward the bottom.
She's underwater in this direction somewhere. And so I just kind of had my eyes open. To me, it felt like a long time that I was under the water. I noticed a body and it was just going down, 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 down. I grabbed a hold of her under her armpits and then just kicked for the surface, popped up, and I was just trying to keep her airway open, signaled for help.
70 yards offshore, Micah treads water in the cold, pounding surf. Without a free arm to swim, the rip current pulls the two of them farther out to sea.
I was just praying to God, get this girl, get me out of here, get us back to the shore.
Lifeguard Catherine Graham is scanning the water for the other victim as San Diego Lifeguards Eric Kerr and Lance Mendoza pull up to the scene.
I was driving, so I just looked for the closest spot to where people were waving. I pulled in and just put the brakes on as fast as I can. Sergeant Kerr jumped off, grabbed the surfboard, and scurried down the rocks like a madman.
With secondary lifeguards now on scene, Catherine sprints into the water.
Catherine knew once she had all the resources in place that she could come and assist me.
Okay, I'm seeing a lifeguard going in there in the water right now.
Okay, good.
The engine is about to go in the water too.
Great. And Francisco, we will have all kinds of resources there shortly, so you're helping quite a bit. Stay on the line.
Okay.
When I was paddling up to the victim, going as fast as I could, as I got closer, I could tell he had one of the victims on the surface.
I knew that at some point Catherine was going to get to me, but as soon as Eric paddled up on that board, I just remember thinking, this is, okay, awesome, we got to get this girl on this board.
I could tell that she was certainly unconscious, and I could see her airway was filled with vomit, seawater. Just gave her one strong ventilation, turned her on her side. All that air came back out and blew vomit, seawater out.
The victim is barely alive. With time running out, Eric Kerr paddles her toward the shoreline.
As I got about halfway to the beach, our jet ski, which was also responding, came on scene.
She was unconscious. She was lifeless. We knew that we had seconds to get her breathing again, get her to onto the beach to give her a heartbeat again.
I just told Catherine, get her into shore as fast as you can. I'll stay out here and keep looking for this second person that I was told was out here.
With the drowned girl now on the beach, medics go to work trying to resuscitate her.
We got to the beach, and she was just a limp, unconscious person at the time.
As medics prepare to transport Jessica Ung, lifeguards head back out in search of Troy Lee.
We knew we had to get back in the water, that we needed to find him immediately.
Micah Moore is still frantically searching the 53-degree water.
Francisco, yeah, the last place that you saw the woman, I want you to etch that in your mind, and I want you to try to remember exactly the last place you saw her. You've already helped us save one person. Now we want to try to help you.
Surcom 1258.
1258, Surcom.
I'll be there in just a minute.
I was off duty that day, and I was called in late in the afternoon. I got a call from my supervisor telling me that there was a drowning that had just occurred. I got into my Jeep and I came down the hill. It was a very complicated situation when I arrived on scene because we had about 5 or 6 different witnesses, each one with a different story. So when I arrived on scene, I became the incident commander. I found 5 or 6 different witnesses, and I immediately tried to interview those people to try to get as much information as I could.
Lifeguard and peace officer Ed Vadroska determines the point last seen and initiates a full-scale sweep of the water.
We started a full-fledged Codex emergency where we try to saturate the water with as many divers as we possibly can to try to find the other victim.
As the search for Troy Lee continues, Jessica arrives at a local hospital. There she slips into a coma, and doctors do not expect her to survive the night. It's been over an hour since the 911 call, and still no sign of Troy Lee.
The sun had set, and with the waves and currents and the lack of light, just operationally there wasn't much more that could be done.
Rescue operations have come to an end. The next morning, Vadroska leads the recovery efforts.
We put 60 divers in the water. In the next 2 days, covered an expansive area here, all the way down to the bluff edge down there, probably 3/4 of a mile of ocean, and we were unable to locate his body.
3 days after that tragic night, lifeguards receive an update on Jessica's condition. Miraculously, she defied all odds and came out of her coma. La Jolla Shores is a popular 1-mile stretch of San Diego that spans from La Jolla Cove all the way to the end of Black's Beach. At the top of Black's Beach is the Torrey Pines glider port, one of the most popular destinations in the world for paragliding.
The gliders have been around for some 30 years now, and within the last 5 to 10 years, the advances have just made an amazing aircraft.
Paraglider pilots come here for one reason: the weather. Here, the steady onshore winds hit the nearly vertical cliffs. This creates an updraft of wind that keeps the paragliders in the air for hours at a time. But whenever people attempt to fly, there is danger. In May 2012, a 52-year-old woman was flying above Torrey Pines when she lost control of her paraglider. Lifeguards responded quickly, but it was too late. She became the 3rd person to lose her life here in the last 20 years. No stranger to this type of emergency, 13-year veteran Sergeant Mike Cranston is on patrol when he hears a similar call. Longtime paraglider Bob Hammond witnessed the crash firsthand.
As soon as I saw him, I said to myself, what is he doing? He was launching from that flag right there, which is exactly where you don't want to be. The front of the glider folded like that, and he just kind of went down and out of sight. When I saw him go down, I figured it was pretty serious.
Sergeant Cranston arrives on scene and faces several challenges: finding the victim, determining his injuries, and then extricating him.
Dispatch, I'm just pulling into the glider port, and we'll initiate glider port command.
The victim has fallen in an inaccessible section of the cliff. Ground and water units are deployed to see if they can spot his location.
We can't do verbal communications as easy as we want because the wind is quite noisy this high up on the cliffs.
So we actually launched the ski, and we had the ski go down the beach to see if they could see anything.
A visual on him now. He's behind that ridge. He's got a blue helmet. He may be stuck or injured.
Although they found the victim, getting to him is no easy task.
He's some distance away from our rescuer down there who can see him. So we're going to put one of our guys over the edge on rope to go down and make contact.
Lifeguards begin rigging the main line while the rescuer loads an emergency trauma pack in case the paraglider needs immediate medical attention. Lifeguard Rob Eichelberger will be the rescuer lowered down the steep cliff's edge.
The cliffs at Black's Beach are sandstone, and they're constantly crumbling. We've had a couple of landslides in the last couple of years, so it's always something that's in the back of your head as a rescuer going over.
Lifeguard Eichelberger has descended over 200 feet. Lifeguards on the beach guide him to the victim.
Be right below you. Dispatch update, rescuers at the victim. Confirmation, non-injury. He's stuck where he is, and he is unable to go any further.
Because it's late in the day, we're very aware of the light that we're losing and the possibility that this could go into darkness.
Call slowly. He's got some vertical, so nice and slow.
He's about 10 feet to the vertical.
Calling slowly.
The challenges of getting the victim back up the cliff are making sure that the victim has what we call 2 points of attachment, one in the safety line and one in the main line, and then just kind of guiding them up the cliff.
You doing all right, Ed?
Yeah.
Just stand by when we're staying on the way closer.
Tethered to the guards, the victim ascends the cliff face, carefully guided along the way. Anxious to get to level ground, he's not out of danger just yet.
Slowly.
Luckily, in this case, the person wasn't injured. An injury response on the side of a cliff is a lot more complicated. It involves a helicopter, us going over the edge with backboards and stretchers. We could tell he was walking, we just couldn't tell if there was any injuries we didn't know about.
Stop. Release slowly.
I don't want to say this was an easy cliff rescue because none of them are easy and they all have a high element of danger and risk. However, this one went about as straightforward as it could have gone. This is kind of what we train for.
4 feet.
Patients up top.
Yeah. I'm glad you're okay.
No, I'm fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No problem.
I fly a little bit, all of a sudden it starts spinning. And I said, okay, that's it. I lose all control. Lifeguard with the help whenever it happens. If they're not there, maybe I climb and just sleep and fall. I don't know.
It's been 2 years since Jessica Ung nearly drowned at Torrey Pines State Beach.
Okay, I'm seeing the lifeguard going in there in the water right now. The range is about to go in the water too.
Today, she returns to Torrey Pines to meet with Ed Vadraska, the incident commander of that fateful rescue.
Have you gone into the ocean since the event?
I came a couple of times right after I got out of the hospital. Just kind of put my toes in the water. That's about it. I'm still a little afraid to go out there.
Right about here is actually where the whole event happened. Right now, the ocean is a lot safer than the day that you were here. And there was a big trough right on the inside here. And you actually got into that trough. And it was just a really bad place to swim, unfortunately. And you got in that rip current and then you started getting pulled out. You don't remember the lifeguard getting to you?
No. I remember it was a really warm day. It's really sunny, a really beautiful day. I went to the beach with my friend Troy. We had one boogie board. I had the first turn. I went out there. When the wave came, I was barely hanging on and it just ripped out of my hands. After struggling, I knew it was impossible for me to get the boogie board, so I just tried to stay up until someone could come get me.
The lifeguards were gone for the day, but her friend Troy Lee recognized the danger.
He saw that I was in trouble, so he was waving his arms, screaming for help.
Witness statements report that Troy Lee entered the water in an effort to save Jessica, but was swiftly pulled out by the rip current. He never reached his friend.
I couldn't get my whole head or my shoulders out of the water anymore. It was just my face. So the last thing I remember seeing was looking up to the sky, and that was all that I could see. I felt that I was going to die.
Thanks to an incredible collaborative effort between California State Beach Lifeguards and San Diego Lifeguards, Jessica was pulled from the water and brought to shore. She spent 3 days in a coma and miraculously survived.
The nurse and the doctor tell me then she maybe never come back from the coma.
That was terrible to see your daughter lay down there and almost shut me down.
It was a bittersweet rescue. 18-year-old Troy Lee lost his life trying to save Jessica. Several days were spent searching for him, but his body was never recovered.
I woke up in the hospital, and the first thing I thought about was him. I wanted him to know that I was okay. And I had no idea that he went in the water. I thought he was completely fine because the last thing I saw, he was on the shore.
Jessica has no memory of her drowning. Lifeguard Ed Vidroska was able to arrange a private meeting so she could thank her rescuers.
So grateful and thankful for Ed, Micah, and their whole entire crew. They're heroes.